Thank you very much for welcoming us today. When I walked in the church today, I felt such a huge, overwhelming welcoming from everyone, so thank you for that. My name's Paisley Shakel. I actually live in Orillia, and over time I had noticed our community and many others failing in people on the streets, homelessness, addiction, and mental illness seemed to be overwhelming lately. And driving around, seeing people struggling was really bothering me. So I decided maybe I would make a rehabilitation center because I came from a hospital environment, over 30 years working in hospitals, and noticing there was a great need there as well. So what happened was I thought to myself, I'm going to build a rehab program. And then I realized that maybe I was on Fantasy Island somewhere, that this is going to take a long time, and people need help today, not 30 years from now when that might happen. So I decided maybe I would go out and investigate and look around and see what was available out there in the community for people that needed the help. And I bumped into a program called Teen Challenge, and I decided to investigate further because it seemed really interesting and very successful. So I actually drove out there with a girlfriend to Teen Challenge in King City to have a tour. And I was met by a lovely lady, Tricia, who you'll see here shortly. She'll be speaking. And did the whole tour and saw how they operated. And it was exactly what I felt that I would have built as a rehab program. And I was so excited to see that this was actually working and that this was the Women's Center. And I noticed how impressive they had done the work there. They have skills programs and counseling, and it's a faith-based program, which I thought would be really helpful because when Jesus is there, we have total healing. So I did my tour there, and I decided to partner up with them and do some promotion, fundraising, and education about rehabilitation and why Teen Challenge was the place and the program that I chose to pick to promote. So I just went to a lawyer and said, hey, how am I supposed to do this? I really want to get involved and help the people in our community. And so she suggested that I just ride off the backs of Teen Challenge and work with them and promote them, which seemed to be a great idea. So I had last year a small gathering at my home with a few businesses in Orillia that came. For example, Home Hardware, Giant Tiger, and the mayor and a few people from the council came just to see what it was all about and what we could do as a community to get ourselves together to see if we could help some of these people that were struggling on our own streets. So over time, this has been going on about a year. I've done some presentations at different locations, and it's been a huge success. So my job really is to promote Teen Challenge, to educate everyone, and see what we can do for our community here in Orillia. We also got some great help with different businesses that said if someone from our community decided to go to the program and came out successfully, that we would try and help them afterwards. And I had some offers from some businesses that they would offer these people jobs as well. So you would you wouldn't just be sent out from your program and left on your own in your community to figure things out on your own. I want to be able to help the people continue their lives successfully in our community. So that's why I decided Teen Challenge was the place that I'm going to promote. And hopefully the girls here can give you some ideas of what the progress is and how successful it is. And they have some testimonies to give this morning. And I was very, very impressed with it all. We were just at a gala a few weeks ago as well for the Women's Center. And it's a very humbling experience to go to something like that and see the results of everyone that successfully completes this program. So again, thank you for having us today, and I'm just going to pass the mic over to our girls from Teen Challenge.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Paisley. Good morning, church. I'm just going to move this a bit in the light. My eyes are not what they used to be. All right. So as Paisley shared, my name is Tricia, and I am so grateful to be here this morning on behalf of the Teen Challenge Ontario Women's Centre, which is located in Aurora and is one of our 9 centres across Canada, where we help men and women overcome addiction and lead full and meaningful lives. And, we love people like Paisley who see the importance and the value in our mission and come alongside us and advocate for us. And so thank you, Paisley. She's from Orillia. Obviously, this community means a lot to her. It also means a lot to me. I was born here. I was raised here. My mom and my Oma live here. And so this is just an extra special opportunity to be here today. So thank you so much. We are going to start a video about who we are and get us started.
The worst part of addiction is not addiction. It's what it steals from you. It steals joy, dignity, health, purpose, family, relationships, but worst of all, addiction steals hope. Hopelessness is what Teen Challenge is truly fighting, because hopelessness is not true. Once an addict is not always an addict. At Teen Challenge, we know that there are those trapped by addiction in every community across Canada from every walk of life. Through our 12-month faith-based in-residence program, we have helped prove that the past decisions do not dictate the future. We believe that there is always hope after addiction, and we are committed to walking alongside those in need to find it. But it doesn't stop there. Teen Challenge Canada is dedicated to helping those not only caught in addiction, but their families and communities. At our 9 centers across Canada, we are dedicated to rebuilding lives by investing in people, one person, one day, one choice at a time. Helping men and women face their past and find new life free from addictions that not only transforms themselves, but everyone around them. Teen Challenge, helping men and women overcome substance addiction to lead full and productive lives every day.
Thank you so much. So I'm happy to share that I've had the absolute privilege of working as a donor relations officer for Teen Challenge for 4 years now. And basically that's just a fancy title that means that I help to fundraise the necessary costs for the women to come through the doors and take part in our 12-month program. As we do not receive any support from the government, we do not want to compromise on our faith foundation and Jesus at the center of our teaching. And so part of my job is coming out to lead outreaches such as this one. And we do this for a few reasons. First is to help spread awareness. We know that most people that are sitting here today know of someone who is struggling with addiction and could use a program like Teen Challenge. And so most of the ladies and men that come through our doors actually heard about it from an outreach similar to this one. The second reason is to help support the ministry. And the third reason is to share the hope that we have in Jesus. For we know that although Satan comes to steal, to kill, and destroy, and uses drugs and alcohol to do this, that this does not have to be the end of the story. That we serve a God of restoration who absolutely loves to take the most broken lives and to transform them into something beautiful. In fact, when Jesus came and spent time doing ministry on earth, he went out of his way to seek out the lost and to bind up the brokenhearted. And he calls us to do the same. And that is the exact heart of the Teen Challenge ministry. The women that come through our doors are absolutely broken and brokenhearted. And most have been living in this life for so long they can't even imagine one that's different. Most believe that they've burnt too many bridges or they're too far gone to, go back or to start a new life. And it breaks my heart to think of how many people are actually believing that right now on the streets. In fact, the CMHA reports that actually 21% of the Canadian population ages 15 and over will meet the criteria for addiction at some point in their lifetime. And there's currently over 20 accidental deaths due to overdose every day in Canada. And unfortunately, addiction doesn't just impact the user, it impacts so many people around them. You know, the parents that are trying to go about living their day-to-day lives, knowing their child is using a substance that could kill them at any moment, wondering, is tonight the night I'm going to get that dreaded phone call? Kids that are being raised in the homes of those struggling in addiction, wanting nothing more than to see their parents healthy and happy, but in the meantime are being exposed to trauma that could potentially follow them the rest of their life and continue that cycle. Grandparents stepping up to raise grandkids because parents just aren't capable. Siblings, friends, churches, whole communities. Everyone's impacted by addiction one way or another, directly or indirectly. And that's why the Teen Challenge mission is so critical. Because what it does is it pulls someone out of their chaotic, triggered environment and brings them to a safe place. Away from the triggers, away from the temptations and stresses of the world, so they can truly focus on their healing journey. And you know, I'd like to show a video on how to get help at Teen Challenge.
Addiction didn't start the way you thought it would. It started one choice at a time, one day at a time. But those choices quickly built up. Then came the fear, the shame, and the guilt. And by the time you wanted it all to stop, you couldn't. Teen Challenge knows that the choices that became the addiction change an individual inside and out. That's why the road to recovery is so hard. So much so that people on their own don't know where to start or how to get help. The road to recovery starts small. It starts by asking for help. Thousands of individuals and families began their journey to recovery at a Teen Challenge Center. By walking alongside those trapped in addiction, Teen Challenge has helped men and women find freedom from their personal addiction and has helped restore them to their families and communities. There is help, there is hope, and there is freedom from addiction. Start your road to recovery today.
Thank you. So that road to recovery is created through many different avenues at Teen Challenge. One being the addictions counseling, where the ladies in our program learn to get to the root issues and the reasons that they use drugs in the first place. Also through our Christian education and spiritual formation classes. The ladies are in the Bible 2 to 3 hours a day, learning about who God is and who they are in Him and how that looks to live out and what true surrender looks like. So for it states that in 2 Corinthians 5:17 that therefore if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, behold the new is here. And we stand firm in that. We believe that when we surrender to the Lord that He shows up and He has the power to transform. And with that, I would like to invite two of the ladies that are currently in the Teen Challenge program that are going through this process of healing right now. They're going to share what their lives looked like before and what God has been doing in them since. And so we are going to start with Jennifer, and she will be followed by Hillary. And so if we could give them a warm welcome, that'd be great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer. I'm the youngest of 4 children. My parents separated shortly after I was born, and my dad moved away upon declaring that he was gay. My Nana was Catholic. She ensured that we all went to Catholic school and attended church when we visited her. She was a saving grace to us and often ensured we had some basic needs met, as my mother struggled to provide. When I was 8, my dad died of AIDS, and my mom, who already abused substances, turned to harder drugs, and my brother stepped up to take care of me. I learned to take care of the house and started eating at friends' houses and stealing to save us money. I was very isolated and in my head. I never shared thoughts or feelings with my family or friends at school. My brother and I became angry and resentful towards my mom, and becoming a teenager, I let out all my feelings and emotions that had been held in. Eventually, changes in my mom began for the better, and I was moved to public school where I began smoking cigarettes and marijuana. I started working legally as a teen and quickly became a workaholic, and just as quickly started to steal from my job, and this became a trend as I moved on to other jobs. I had little to no moral compass when it came to stealing from stores and workplaces. Not too long after that, I started drinking and doing drugs and having sex with my first serious boyfriend. I'd steal our needs and use my paychecks to buy things I couldn't steal. I did terrible in school due to my attitudes and behaviors. I spent most of my time skipping school and getting in trouble with the law, but every time something was too bad, I would work to fix it. I'd stop fighting, stealing, and failing, but it would never last. I stopped partying and managed to graduate. I now see this was by the grace of God. At 21, I spent a night with a guy who assaulted me, resulting in pregnancy. I decided to keep the baby, and I changed many bad habits while pregnant, but shortly after her birth, I started to smoke again and also sell drugs. I got into a new relationship within the first year of her life, and years passed, I was expecting my second daughter. This relationship didn't last, although we exhausted all avenues and efforts, and around that time, I was also diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety, but I refused medication because I feared additional reliance on more substances. For 10 years, I did everything on my own for my kids. I continually attempted to build my life up and would knock it back down when something was missing. I had no clue it was God that was missing. I started using dating sites, and that quickly escalated into habitual and casual sex, and realizing I could utilize this to make money, I became a sex worker. Almost immediately, I was assaulted, and that fueled me to have no emotion. So at this point, I was adding to my addictions, and I would cope any way possible through them. I woke up every day wishing I didn't. But I knew there was something better out there for me. I could just never get to it. I, through the grace of God, learned landscaping through 2 of my clients and fell in love with the work. During this time, I learned I was pregnant, and it was a working client. I promptly ended the pregnancy and eventually was earning enough to stop seeing clients and got a boyfriend and attempted to live a regular life again. I had gathered quite a few of my own customers and tools and was convinced to open my own landscape business. I became successful and overwhelmed with jobs and added a second job on top of running my business, and I ran myself into the ground with work. And I admitted myself to the hospital after hearing my friend had taken her life, and my suicidal ideations became serious. I was diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder and given medication. And when that didn't help, I caved and sent everyone, including my children, away and created a suicide plan that only drugs could accomplish. Or so I thought. Instead, I found God, but was so deeply embedded in my sin and the drugs that I was convinced He wanted me dead too. This was the farthest from the truth, but deep in my addiction, it was my conclusion. I couldn't figure out why I kept fighting for my life, but I now know it was God. After facing eviction from my townhouse, I went to stay at my friend's cabin in the bush, the only person that I knew that went to church. I went there to either die or find out how to get to God. And a pastor showed up at that cabin to check on my friend, and it was no coincidence. He brought us supplies and didn't stop checking in and praying with us. I got a call while at that cabin that my mom was on her deathbed, and within days she died. My friend gave me a Bible, and I started reading and praying every day, which increased the enemy attack, and I tried to end my life. 2 failed attempts, thanks to God. It was then that I called out to Him that I needed His help and a safe place to stay. And within 2 weeks, a shelter for women opened in a church, and I knew it was God calling. And I now knew for sure He didn't give up on me. I showed up at a Bible study and found the best church family ever waiting there for me. They all made every study about helping me get closer to God. And that day I met my church mom, who taught me everything I needed to know and saved me a seat at church every Sunday. She mentioned her daughter had gone to Teen Challenge, and it was a success, and I knew God had a plan to help me recover. My church family helped me every step of the way to make sure that I walked in the doors of Teen Challenge on June 10th, and I've been sober for 11 months now. Thank you. Romans 6:14, for sin shall not be my master, because I am not under the requirements of law, but under the freedom of God's grace. I spent my entire life wrestling with God, not even knowing that's what I was doing. But without God and Teen Challenge, I would not be standing here to tell my story. Romans 6:6, through the death of Christ and our union with him, I have been set free from the dominion and power of sin, and I am no longer a slave to sin. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hillary. I am the youngest of 3 children. My 2 older brothers and I were raised in a Christian home. However, we only really went to church on special occasions. My dad was a very hard worker and always made sure we had everything we needed, but this meant he was never really home. We were a tight-knit family, always with cousins and grandparents, but all wasn't as it seemed from the outside. My parents fought a lot, and when I was very young, my oldest brother started running away from home. To avoid the chaos, I found myself escaping to my friends' houses, and when I was only 12 years old, I began drinking and smoking cigarettes. The summer going into high school, a lot changed for me. My parents divorced, and my mom and I moved from my childhood home. My mom was broken, and I blamed my dad, but most of all, I blamed myself. I thought maybe if I had done better, they would have stayed together. At this time, I started acting out, partying, stealing, and became promiscuous to fit in and to forget my feelings about my parents' divorce. I obviously did not understand the repercussions of living this type of lifestyle until I was sexually assaulted at 14 years old. At this time in my life, I decided I wanted to give my life to God. I started attending church with my mom, and I focused all my attention on my studies. I graduated high school with honors and attended Conestoga College. Things were looking good for me. I had a steady boyfriend at this time, and I put God on the back burner as I was really enjoying my life. It wasn't until after I was in a serious car accident that my life began to really spiral out of control. Even though I had forgotten God, God saved me that day. I was told that I shouldn't have survived the accident. After my accident, my boyfriend and I broke up, and I slipped back into a life of drinking and using party drugs. My life was a blur. The years began to slip away on me. Somewhere along this broken path of partying and drinking, someone offered me heroin, and I decided to try it. It felt like a warm hug. Someone had taken away instantly all of my troubles. I was hooked. Every heartbreak, every friend that died by suicide, every death in the family, I no longer had to feel any of it. Then my uncle tragically took his life. There are no words to explain the pain I felt and my family felt. Nothing seemed to work to cover it up. And I knew after losing her brother, my mom would never be able to cope with losing her only daughter, so I tried to quit. But the warm hug had turned into an embrace I couldn't get out of. I was trapped. My habit was so bad at this point that I had to start using stronger opiates to get the same effect. To even get up in the morning, I started using fentanyl. At some point, I entered into a very abusive relationship. I was controlled, manipulated, and hurt. I lived in constant fear of my life. Somewhere along the way, I ended up getting pregnant. I remember not even being allowed to tell my own mother. I was 24 weeks along when I was forced to abort the baby. I couldn't live with myself. I wanted to die. I stopped fighting back, and the abuse from my boyfriend got worse. He knew how to break me and had succeeded. Even though I knew who God was, I thought he didn't want me. I also did not want him. I didn't care what happened to me if I died. But God was there. On Thanksgiving 2024, my partner was arrested and charged with assault with a deadly weapon, forcible confinement, among other charges. I thought I had lost everything. I even grieved for the loss of him. That's how messed up I was. I didn't want to live and actively tried to take my own life. I remember once, after an attempt, I cried out to God asking him why he had forsaken me. And God answered me, because on June 19th, 2025, I found the courage and strength to call 911. I had had enough, but it wasn't over yet. I remember the doctor telling me that there was nothing he could do and gave me a bus ticket and told me to go home. I was that far gone, but I did not use that bus ticket. I sat there for 8.5 hours for them to readmit me. On June 21st, I was taken to a detox center, and despite how hard it was, I admitted to my parents that I was in full-blown addiction. While in detox, it was recommended that I attend a long-term treatment center, and that is when I remembered that an old friend of mine had gone through Teen Challenge. Over the years, I would see how well she was doing, and I longed for the same freedom she had. I decided then to apply online, and on October 7th, 2025, I walked through the doors of Teen Challenge. I've been sober for 11 months. God did not give up on me. Through everything, he was there. I look back now and I see his fingerprints all over my life. Without a doubt, I can say that he was the one who saved me. I used to think there was no hope for me, that I was too far gone, that I was too deep in the pit. But God pulled me out of the pit of despair and set my feet on solid ground. The road to recovery is not easy. Sometimes I'm down on my knees begging God to renew my strength. Others, my hands are held high in praise. Since getting sober and getting right with God, my ex has been tried and found guilty of all the charges against me, which means I don't have to go to court and testify against him. Also, our Women's Center participated in a concert event, and my mom and my brother came to see me singing at the Teen Challenge benefit called Harmony for Hope. For them, seeing me sing was a really big deal. I used to sing in a choir when I was a kid, and my mom would always come to see me sing. But because of my using, I had stopped singing. God had found a way to bring that part of my story to full circle also. He has definitely put a new song of praise in my mouth. God has also given me a family at Teen Challenge, something I couldn't be more blessed to have. The friendships that I have made will be everlasting. In the future, after graduating from Teen Challenge, I want to attend college and sing in a choir and share my testimony with anyone who will hear it and to save lives. A piece of scripture that keeps me going is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Thank you, God, for not giving up on me.
Thank you, ladies. It's not easy coming up and being so vulnerable with such intimate details of your life, but we know it brings freedom. So thank you for coming up, ladies. Investing a year of your life into Teen Challenge is not easy. It's probably one of the most challenging things someone can do, and I can say that because it was just about 8 years ago that I showed up to the doors of Teen Challenge desperate for change. I never would have imagined that my life would have been led down such a destructive and dark path, but there I was, a full-blown intravenous heroin, fentanyl, crack, and cocaine user. And I asked myself, wow, how did I get here? What went wrong? And although I will never know for sure, what I do know is that those who experience 6 or more serious traumatic events as a child are actually 4,600 times more likely to abuse substances. And so although childhood trauma is not always the root issue, I can definitely look back in my life and see some events that may have led to my making such poor decisions as a young adult that eventually would lead into a life of addiction. And so just to give you a few examples, I was born in Orillia, raised in Medonte on a farm with my 2 older brothers and my parents. I was the little girl both my parents were desperate to have after having 2 boys. And so I was their favorite and obviously my dad's little princess. And he treated me like that. And I found a lot of my identity in being his favorite. And so it really shook my world when my mom and dad got separated and my dad chose not to continue a relationship with me. I was just like, how can someone that loves you so much just so quickly throw you away like you were nothing? And so right then and there was a deep root of rejection was formed. And I can see, looking back in my life, how I literally did whatever it took to avoid feeling that, and would do anything it took to receive acceptance from my peers. Following that, I was sexually abused on an ongoing basis as a child from someone within the family. I knew that bringing it to the surface would cause a lot of destruction within the family, and so I kept it to myself, hoped it would stop, but it did not. I was also very badly bullied in school, and I found myself being promiscuous to gain the acceptance of my peers, and that led to my being pregnant at the age of 15. Everybody told me the only thing to do was to have an abortion. I was just a child myself. Nobody told me about the shame and the guilt that would consume me right afterwards. And so that happened. Shortly after that, I met my son's father, and although we were using protection, and we still got pregnant, and I found myself pregnant again at the age of 16. This time I decided to keep my son, Braden. He was then, and is still now, such a great joy in my life. But at that time, I was so broken and I didn't know the Lord. So everything that happened to me, I just suppressed and just pushed down as far as I could. I was a good mom until when he was about a year and a half, I was involved in a very traumatic car accident where the other driver died on impact and I almost died myself. And this just, brought back taking a life with a vengeance, that guilt, and I started to self-destruct. I quickly destroyed everything in my life that was good. I broke up with my son's father. I started isolating and stopped hanging out with my friends, became depressed, and started dabbling in drugs and alcohol to cope. And what started small quickly escalated, and before I knew it, I was in a full-blown addiction. I hated seeing the pain that I was causing my mom and my son and my brothers, but I didn't know how to stop. I would try to get clean. I would go to different treatment programs. Every time just lasted a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and then I would go back. And the cycle continued. Eventually, I got to a place where I figured the only way to stop everybody from hurting was to remove myself from the equation, and I was ready to die. But my family, they never gave up on me. I actually hated the fact that they still carried this hope that I could change. And so they begged me to go to Teen Challenge, and eventually I agreed to go. Upon my arrival, I was less than 100 pounds and so malnourished I could barely walk. I was... My hands and my arms were swollen from using needles all day, every day. I had lesions covering my skin. Multiple drug-induced seizures and overdoses had severely impacted me to the point where I couldn't even talk. So anyone that would have looked at me would have thought that I was beyond hope. But we know that what seems impossible to man is possible with God. And through the Teen Challenge program, God completely healed my mind, my body, and my spirit, and I will be celebrating 8 years of sobriety in September of this year. So praise the Lord. Yeah. And God didn't stop there, because God was so far off our radar in my family, and my whole family was steeped in addiction. My mom had turned to alcohol as a means to cope with what I was going through. My son was using drugs daily, and my brothers were also heroin addicts. But by witnessing the transformation in my life, they have all been set free from their addiction and serve the Lord as well. So when God saves one life, it's really so much bigger of a picture to save so many more alongside them. And now I get to be, a beacon of hope for the other ladies that come through the Teen Challenge program. And even 8 years later, God is still using my story to spread awareness and share hope. And it's just incredible. I'm just in awe of how he can use everything that was so bad and all my bad choices and use them for good. And so that's why we are here today, because without support from churches, individuals, and businesses, Teen Challenge might not be able to provide this opportunity, and stories like mine and Jennifer's and Hillary's might not be made possible. And so today, I would ask that you may consider partnering with Teen Challenge. There's a few ways that you can do that. First is to give a one-time gift, and we are so grateful if you can do that today. We have a debit and credit machine on the table at the back. The second way is to consider joining our Journey community. This is a group of people that give a monthly amount that suits them best. So you pick whatever works for you. Every 10, 20, $1 million and everything in the middle has a lasting impact on the women that we serve. And so please consider this. Please also pray for us. Pray for our staff, for our clients to experience true and lasting freedom, and for our provisions to be met. So 3 ways that you can consider today that would be incredibly meaningful. Also, if you know someone or are struggling personally with addiction, please come chat with us at the table, and we'd be happy to direct you with some resources that you might need. So we're just going to end off with one more video called The Journey, and then we will go from there.
Addiction doesn't just happen. The journey to addiction many times begins with tremendous personal hurt, pain, trauma, and despair. And so finding freedom from addiction doesn't just happen either. The journey to recovery begins with loving individuals, daily walking with men and women, helping them to face their past generational wounds, their inabilities to cope, or lack of personal identity, so they can start the transformation into the person they were intended to be. Now, this journey of recovery would not be possible if it weren't for the incredible faithfulness and generosity from supporters like you. At Teen Challenge, ongoing partnerships are much more than the financial backbone of our ministry. They are a testimony to all those still in addiction, that even in the midst of their brokenness, they can know they are worth investing in. By joining the journey and becoming part of our incredible community of monthly supporters, composed of passionate, generous, driven people like yourself, you are not only helping someone on their personal road to recovery, you are becoming a key part of their victory story. Your financial support shows those in our program that you believe there's still hope. It is not too late for help, and you are willing to invest in them to help them find it. For any reoccurring monthly or annual amount, join the journey. And your support of our 12-month faith-based in-residence program proves to those in our care that past life choices do not have to dictate the future, and that life, purposeful, productive life after addiction, is possible. Support Teen Challenge Canada and join the journey today. Visit teenchallenge.ca.
Thanks again for having us and for hearing our stories. Thank you, Brent, for hosting us, and I look forward to getting to know you guys a little better after the service at lunch.